Hello world, welcome to a Champions Online Guide. Today we're going to go over the Blade archetype, which is all about stabbing things and making them bleed. Glass cannon, melee, damage dealer. I have actually leveled 2 of these all the way up to level 40. And the first one was way back when the experience alerts were 2-minute drills instead of money alerts. But you don't get an area effect attack until level 11, which can suck. But you can use the advantage on Reaper's Caress to make it an area effect if you really want to. Honestly, it does not take very long to get to level 11. I personally don't like Scything Blade, even though with the advantage, it does add an extra bleed stack, and it's a good way to just start off with a bleed stack right away, but I don't like it. Proper rotation would be to use Scything Blade and then Reaper's Caress to get all your bleed stacks and then rupture them with Reaper's Embrace, but this archetype can do plenty of damage without having to do that, but you can if you want to. I personally prefer the kick move, Tides, but you don't get it until level 30. Things can't hit you if they're flying up in the air, which is absolutely hilarious, so I like that one. So that's a fun move. In the meantime, Reaper's Caress with the area effect advantage or Scything Blade both work just fine. And of course I would recommend talenting for Constitution since you don't actually get any other way. Another thing that I did is I picked up the Elusive Monk on parry. Yes, it does have a damage debuff, but you do so much damage with this archetype that it doesn't even matter, and staying alive is more important than the 10% damage reduction. It does of course help if you level with friends, so that hopefully one of them can tank or heal you. At level 40 I added challenging strikes to Reaper's Caress, but if you don't want to have the extra aggro, then don't take it. I figured, well, I'm going to take aggro anyway, I might as well add challenging strikes. At level 40 you finally get Reaper's Embrace. Tapping does more damage than fully charging it, so if you want the highest DPS, tap Reaper's Embrace to rupture all the bleed stacks and then just start stacking again. I was pretty lazy with my gear. I did have the regular heroics, but on the secondaries I just used the armadillo gear, and it gives extra defense, a little bit of that, which every bit helps. Otherwise, depending on if you choose Dexterity, Mastery, or Warden Mastery, you may not need to get crit gloves or crit chance gloves. You could go with offense. I believe I have the piercing gloves because I went with Warden Mastery and I still have just under 100% severity. And for gear, I would probably go with the health gear if I was going heroics, just because health is more important than defense, and you need all the health you can get if you want to take this into some of the later game content. And you can just add an impact gem for defense. You could also take dodge gear, but you're never going to get very high dodge with Way of the Warrior, and I personally prefer to have just regular damage and health. You can take this kind of character into Gravatar, but I would recommend having at the very least 7,000 health. And you will absolutely need a healer, especially as a melee character. You need more healing than you can get with the healing packs. That just won't be enough for you. But if you do have like a pocket healer and you want to put challenging strikes and Reaper's Caress, you probably could tank Gravatar. I think if you wanted to live through a death bubble without having to run out, you would probably need to rank up at least rank 2 for parry and 8,000 plus health. I don't know. I haven't tried it. I was in a death bubble and I died. Or a bubble. If you have a bubble healer friend, they can bubble you and you could stand there and sit inside the death bubble and block and not die. That's pretty much the only way that's going to happen. Dexterity and Warden Mastery are both good choices, so whichever one you prefer. I prefer Warden Mastery since Reaper's Crest is what I spam almost all the time. It gives 10% more damage to that, and then you get a stack of grit, which stacks up to 3 times for 3% more damage resistance, and every little bit of damage resistance helps, especially when you are hogging aggro all the time. Pros for this build: it's a bleed rupture build, which is tons and tons of damage, and that's what this thing is for, doing damage, and it does it well. Way of the Wearer is the best passive they could have chosen for a bleed and rupture build, because it not only boosts the physical damage, it boosts the bleed damage as well. It has Masterful Dodge, which Masterful Dodge is probably one of the best active defenses in the entire game, and you get to use it as the blade. Form of the Swordsman, that's a great toggle form, and it has a healing debuff as the advantage, which is even better. It's great for something like, oh, I don't know, Alcathoth, or any of the bosses that heal themselves, but mostly Alcathoth. Still wouldn't want to do him in a burst, but anywhere else, his bleeding or his health is a lot less because you're making him bleed all over the place. Having Shuriken Throw as a ranged attack is great. Normally it's a 100-foot attack. I usually take it to rank 3 in Strong Arm, but you could just do the advantage. That works too. It makes it 50 feet, and I believe it pulls towards you instead. I like the knockdown. It's always handy to have a ranged attack on the melee tune anyway. The tree specs are pretty much perfect. Dexterity is a great tree for a offense-based character. Warden and Brawler are great trees. Brawler is actually a lot better than, Avenger? Like, there's so many useful things in there. No Escape, not that great, but Penetrating Strikes, Ruthless, Finishing Blow, Setup, those are all great attacks to have for a melee tune. The Avenger tree is kind of meh for ranged characters. Brawler is really good for offense-based character. I mean, with Dexterity as your primary super stat, you probably will not need to have extra crit chance or crit severity from your gear. You probably can do without. It kind of makes, I guess there's not really many other choices since the blade doesn't come with a heal, so you can't put in a sentinel brooch or something instead. But if you don't have severity gloves, or you don't have access to them, or you're not going to pick them up right now, then it doesn't really matter because you should get plenty of crit chance and severity just because Dexterity is your main super stat. Cons for this build: the blade is the squishiest squished ever squished. It is pure glass cannon, and it is a giant aggro magnet. Even if you're not using challenging strikes, you will easily be able to get all kinds of aggro. There is no self-healing option. Bountiful Chi Resurgence would have been amazing on this build. It's not too terribly powerful. It does have the healing debuff. I'm not sure how well Smoke Bomb works because I've never used it. I believe it's Smoke Grenade that's completely worthless and not Smoke Bomb. But you'd have to try it out and see if it even works. I mean, you can't use it if you're soloing regular content anyway, because if it does work, then that means the mobs just reset. But then if you do take Smoke Bomb, it means you're giving up your ranged attack, and sometimes that's more important to have. So it's kind of like, do you want a ranged attack so that you're not useless or have to worry about flying or whatever, or do you want Smoke Bomb? It's kind of a crappy choice. Constitution not being a super stat is absolutely terrible, just because some things require you to have a minimum amount of health. If you want to go into Gravitar and expect anyone to be able to heal you, you have to survive at least one shot, and often you might have to survive 2 or 3 shots in a row. I don't even know why they even bother making any of the archetypes without Constitution as a super stat, because you're going to have to invest in it anyway. Dexterity, Constitution, and Recovery would have been much, much better. I mean, yes, that means you don't have the knock resistance or strength, but if you're dead, it doesn't matter, now does it? Something that's irritating is if there is another character that uses bleeds, you will not be able to tell whose bleed stacks are whose. You'll either have to count your Reaper's Caress, or you'll have to wait until the stacks are all the way at 10. And sometimes in things like, if you're doing one of the big open world boss fights, you probably won't be able to even find your bleed stacks on the enemy in the first place, so if you want to actually do decent damage, you're gonna have to count your Reaper's Crest. Some of the dexterity tree options are broken. Really only Brush It Off is known to be broken. It was tested on the forums, it's still broken as far as I know, and that sucks because it's probably the best option in the first row of the dexterity tree and doesn't even work. Combat training I felt was underwhelming. When the crit changes went into place, the dexterity tree wasn't really given anything to compensate for it, so offense granting critical strike rating. I usually go with gear utilization and power swell, but you could also go with combat training instead of power swell. It's kind of annoying that you have Scything Blade and Tides, because for me they perform the same function. I don't like to do a ton of ridiculous combos, but I guess it's there for the option. But Dragon's Bite, I never ever use it. I would rather have had evasive maneuvers, so I can have a really good threat wipe and keep my ranged attack. But it's not as bad as some of the other archetypes where you look at the options and you're like, this is really terrible. Why would you even put this power in here? Masterful Dodge versus whatever the other option is, yeah, it doesn't even matter. Like, seriously, they had Masterful Dodge as a choice with some other power, and there's like no reason whatsoever to pick the other one. It's not even worth knowing what it is. Like, Masterful Dodge, you can't do damage if you're dead, and the blade does not have a whole lot of defensive options, so it's like, it's not really a choice. You really do want to go with Masterful Dodge, because unless you know you are always going to go with a healer, and there's always going to be a healer around. Normally, when I'm an alert, the only time there's a healer is if I'm the healer, and then everyone else is a healer too. But if I'm not the healer, then nobody else is a healer. Maybe I'm just unlucky that way. Overall, this is one of my favorite archetypes. I definitely prefer melee over ranged tunes for the most part. I don't know, just something about being in someone's face and stabbing them. Much more fun, even though melee is not taken very kindly by the game. Things like Gravitar are a reminder that it would have been a lot easier to be there as a ranged character. I would say it probably is harder to use the blade than many of the other archetypes because it is incredibly squishy, and it does depend on you knowing when to run away, but it does do a whole boatload of damage. It's not a lot of people's favorites, so you might have to try it out. It does take a bit to work with it, but I think it's worth it because it's a whole bunch of fun to stab things and watch them bleed out.